Hey, how's everyone doing today? Um, so I planned on inviting. I did invite Dan Ariely, who is a behavioral economist who wrote the book Predictably Irrational, uh, to come on my show. And unfortunately, he did not email me back. I also emailed a while ago Richard Wolff, who's a Marxist economist, to come on my show, and he didn't email me back. It's actually interesting. Pretty much, besides for two libertarians, pretty much every libertarian that I've emailed and contacted had agreed to come on my show. But non-libertarians haven't, either because they, I guess, don't want to talk to people who disagree with them, or because they want to be paid to come on my show. I find it interesting. Apparently, all these greedy capitalists don't mind coming onto a show for free. But people who apparently are critics of the market are not going to come on a show unless they can be paid for doing so, or it's a show with a lot of viewers, because, I'm not good enough for them. Although it would have been nice to at least get, an email back saying I can't do it, sorry. Anyway, the reason I wanted to have Dan Ariely on my show was to sort of critique and criticize his views and his book, Predictably Irrational. So let me sort of do that. First of all, I think everyone should read the book, Predictably Irrational. I don't remember exactly how long, but I believe it's less than 300 pages. It's written in a conversational tone. It's very clear tone. He's a funny guy. It's not an unenjoyable read. It's a very popular book, and you could see why. Although he says many things in the book which are false and just untrue. And the book basically is, he strawmans what mainstream economics says, and then he criticizes the strawman. And that's basically his book. And yeah, I mean, you can criticize strawmen all day, but you don't glean a lot of insight from doing that. So Dan Ariely did something, or you could say he didn't do something, even before reading the book, which I predicted he would fail to do. And that is, I said before reading the book, I bet Dan Ariely is not going to define his terms. He is not going to define what he means by rationality. What is the definition of irrationality? He is simply going to assume that the reader knows what these words mean and make his criticism from there. And because one of the things in the book is, he basically says mainstream economists assume people are rational, and they advocate a free market based on this assumption. This assumption that people are rational is faulty. I'm going to use a series of experiments to prove it's faulty as a way to justify government intervention in the economy. But if you don't define rationality, but how do we know people are being irrational? We have to actually define our terms. And the reason I believe that Dan Ariely does not define his terms is because he doesn't want to be tied down by a definition. If you say this is the definition of something, then someone can say, wait a second, that's not the definition. Or if it is the definition, you have to keep within the confines of that definition. So it's a mark of dishonesty to not ever define your terms. Voltaire once said that if you wish to converse with me, define your terms. And Dan Ariely doesn't do that. So let me, before going into the critique of some of the things he says, define irrationality, or define rationality. And irrationality is obviously just the opposite of rationality. All rationality means that human beings act. Ludwig von Mises wrote a book called Human Action. I think a better title for the book should have been called Human Action, aka rationality, because that's all rationality it means. If you engage in an action, you are being rational. Now deny that human beings are irrational. You can't without engaging in a performative contradiction, because the only way you can deny that people are not engaging in action is by speaking, and speaking is an action. So you're engaging in an action by saying that human beings don't engage in actions. It's a contradiction. So human beings, by their very nature, are rational. Now, rationality is not the same as being infallible. And many people attribute that, right? Many people say if a person is ignorant or misinformed, they're irrational, right? So you could say, during medieval times, people mistakenly believed that if a person had a disease, the way to cure him was to cut up a frog and smear a frog's blood all over the guy. Were they being irrational? No. They were acting on the information that they had as a way to improve people's lives. Now, they were wrong. They were misguided. They were mistaken. And certainly no serious economist would ever attribute infallibility to human beings. I mean, that's complete nonsense. Of course, to err is humane. As the famous saying goes, to err is humane and stupid. But human beings err often. So you're not being irrational. Let's say a person says, I want to go on a diet, and I eat fatty potato chips, and I eat them in excess. Is the person being irrational? No. You can't infer that the person is being irrational, because the person can believe that the best way to lose weight is to, in fact, eat fatty potato chips in excess. And you could argue that by not doing it, he would be irrational, because he's not acting according to his stated goals. But if you believe that the way to lose weight is to eat fatty potato chips, and you do so, you're not being irrational. Now, let's say a person says, I want to eat fatty potato chips and lose weight. Sorry, I want to lose weight. I know that the way to lose weight is to not eat fatty potato chips, and yet you see him eat fatty potato chips. Can you infer that this person is being irrational? No. All you can infer is that this person has a greater preference from eating fatty potato chips than he has for losing weight. As the famous saying goes, actions speak louder than words. Talk is cheap. Perhaps the person wants a reputation for people thinking that he wants to lose weight, so he says he's going to, but he just doesn't ever deliver on his promises, right? I know people who smoke, and while they're smoking, they say, I wish I could quit, and they don't ever try to quit. Are they being irrational? No. They have a high time preference. They enjoy the smoking more than they would enjoy quitting. Otherwise, they'd change the behavior. So they're not being irrational. How does Dan Ariely define irrationality? So how does Dan Ariely define rationality? He doesn't. But if you read his book, it seems to be that Dan Ariely defines rationality in a very rather crude way, and that is acting the way I would act. If I were in that situation, I would act a certain way. I, of course, am rational. If someone acts the opposite as I would act, they are irrational. In other words, calling someone irrationality is an attempt to explain away behavior that one can't understand. Instead of trying to understand why is a person behaving a certain way, you just write them off. They're just being irrational. It's sort of like calling someone mentally ill. All you do is just say, oh, you're mentally ill, and you don't have to actually explain why a person's acting the way they are. So it's just a type of intellectual laziness. And it's unfortunate that a teacher from MIT, which is supposedly the #1 economic school of all time, although I think the fact that Dan Ariely is a professor there, you sort of have to question the validity of these rankings, is unfortunate. So that's the definition of rationality. So with that being said, let me criticize Dan Ariely's view. So one of the things that Dan Ariely says in the book is that people have an irrational reaction to the word free. That they are, when they hear the word free, they're going to choose a worse choice than if the free option wasn't available. For example, he does this by doing 2 experiments. In one experiment, he gives people a choice between buying a Hershey's Kiss for a penny or a Lindt chocolate for 10 cents. Now, the Lindt chocolates cost way more than Hershey's Kisses, and for 10 cents, a Lindt chocolate is a steal, so people buy the Lindt chocolate. Then he decides to make each of these 2 chocolate choices a penny cheaper, where now the Hershey's Kiss is free and the Lindt chocolate is 9 cents. And what do most people do? Do they continue buying the Lindt chocolate, which now is even cheaper? It's 9 cents instead of 10. No, most people take the free option. So according to Dan Ariely, they're acting irrationally. They're not taking the better option, the Lindt chocolate. They're taking the free one. But of course, who says that it's the better option? Perhaps people enjoy more getting something for nothing than getting something for 9 cents that's worth a lot more than 9 cents market value. So you can infer this. Another one that greatly shows Dan Ariely's ignorance and even mainstream intro economics is another experiment where he gives people a choice to buy a $20 Amazon gift card for $7 or a $10 Amazon gift card for free. And Dan Ariely says if people are interested in maximizing the utility, you are getting $13 in profit by buying an Amazon gift card for $7, and you're only getting $10 in profit by getting the free one that's worth $10. So you should choose for $7 the $20 Amazon gift card. Most people take the free one instead, hence they're acting irrationally. Now, this is actually something that mainstream economics would predict. Mainstream economics, one of the rules of mainstream economics says that only relative prices matter, not absolute prices, right? People are interested in maximizing profit. If I buy something for $7 that's worth $20, I get 65% profit. If I get something for $0, aka free, that's worth $10, my profit is 100%. Now, the greater in dollar amounts I'm saving might be more for the $20 gift card, but the profit margin is less. People care about maximizing profit and relative prices, so it makes sense. They are acting perfectly rational by choosing the $10 gift card for free. Plus, people think in terms of loss versus gains. If I get a $10 gift card for free and I lose it, I'm not out any money. Yes, I don't get the $10 gain, but I didn't spend anything for the gift card. Let's say the guy giving the free gift card is a scammer. I don't get the $10 gain, but I didn't lose any money because I didn't buy the card. Let's say someone steals my wallet and takes the card from me. So there are potential losses where when it comes to buying the $20 gift card for $7, let's say it turns out to be a scam. I'm out $7 that I paid for it. Or the other one, I didn't pay anything. Let's say I lose it. I'm out $7. Let's say someone steals it. So one is all benefit because it didn't cost me anything and 100% profit. The other one is a 65% profit. So it's perfectly rational that people would choose the free Amazon gift card, as mainstream economics would say. See, Dan Ariely is committing a fallacy, which all critiques of the market do, and that is ignoring consumer surplus and psychic utility. Dollars and cents is often used as a way to represent maximizing utility because we want to demonstrate maximizing utility, and one way to do that is to represent an increase in dollars and cents is the way you maximize utility. But it's not a substitute for utility. For example, Donald Trump has said that everyone is made better off as a result of eminent domain. Even the people whose houses were taken are made better off because they are given above market prices for their homes. So they're actually making a profit based on by selling their homes. So even if they don't want to buy, even if they don't want to give up their homes, they're making a profit because they get above market price. In other words, Donald Trump is thinking like Dan Ariely. Donald Trump is thinking like a behavioral economist, aka a bad one, because he is ignoring consumer surplus. People have this thing called psychic utility. I value my house maybe 5 times greater than the market value. You're only giving me 3 times greater than the market value, so I'm actually worse off. I mean, to use an analogy, let's say you could sell children. Instead of giving away children for free, you could sell parental rights. And someone says, the average market price of a child of a certain age is $1,000. I'm going to give you $1 million. I'm giving you 100 times more than market value. And some guy goes, I love my child. I have lexicographic preferences. No money in the world will ever be worth more than my child. Now, if the guy gives him the $1 million and takes the child, is the guy made better off? No, because he would rather have his child than the $1 million. So it's not just about maximizing dollars and cents. And that is the flaw that Donald Trump commits. That is the flaw that Dan Ariely commits by ignoring consumer surplus and psychic utility. Another fallacy that Dan Ariely believes is that people make choices in a vacuum, right? The two most important words in all of economics is ceteris paribus, all else being equal, right? No economist who's a good one would say an area that has minimum wage laws is going to have a higher employment rate, a higher unemployment rate as areas that don't, because minimum wage causes unemployment. Rather, what the economist would say is all else being equal. All else being equal, besides for minimum wage laws, the area with the minimum wage is going to have a higher unemployment. But if not else is held equal, then it's not necessarily the case. All else, ceteris paribus, has to be held equal. New information influences people's choices. So, for example, a person could say, I plan on buying a Lamborghini car. And a person gets fired and now doesn't buy the Lamborghini car. Now, Dan Ariely can say, you're being irrational. You never said, if I get fired, I'm not going to buy the Lamborghini car. You said that you plan on buying the Lamborghini car. The fact that there was new information shouldn't change the fact that you're buying the Lamborghini car. You're not buying it. You're not satisfying your preferences. Now, this sounds ludicrous because it is ludicrous. New information alters people's choices. So, for example, one experiment that Dan Ariely gives is that he goes to a bar and he sees a table with 5 people and he has a waiter go read a list of 5 beers. And each person orders one after the other, a different beer. Then Dan Ariely goes to 5 people and he says, go to the waiter, ask them to write down on a piece of paper what beer they want to order. And what he discovers is that the beer that they write down is different than the beer that they say they want when the waiter asks them, what beer do you want? And Dan Ariely says the reason they're doing this is because people want to seem original. And when someone lists 5 beers, someone doesn't want to order the same beer someone else ordered. So once he hears that information, he's going to not order that same beer. But if he doesn't know the type of beer his friend's going to order, he'll order a different beer. In other words, a person's going to change based on new information. Knowing the beer you order is going to influence the type of beer I order. Not knowing the beer you order will result in a different beer I order. According to Dan Ariely, because he's a bad economist, he says that people are being irrational. AKA, new information is influencing people's behavior and choices. He's not holding all else being equal. People might have a greater preference for beer A over beer B, but the fact that they order beer B instead of beer A doesn't mean they're not satisfying their greater preference. It means they have a greater preference for seeming original. And they would rather seem original to their friends than buy the beer. In fact, according to Dan Ariely's bad logic, who seems to only view things in terms of maximizing dollars and cents, you could say that even being in a bar is irrational because you can buy the same beer in a supermarket for cheaper, and the fact that you enter a bar is a sign of irrationality. Now, according to people who are not crazy, this is ludicrous because people go to a bar not because they believe the beer in a bar is cheaper than in the supermarket, but because they like the social atmosphere in a bar, they like maybe hanging out with friends in a bar. So people go to a bar not just because they believe the beers are of better value than the supermarkets, but for the bar atmosphere. So this is just really bad logic on Dan Ariely's part. And he also offers really ludicrous suggestions to try to solve this problem. So for instance, Dan Ariely says, since we know that people are going to be influenced when they order something based on what their friends orders, when the waiter, what you should do is when the waiter comes to take your order, what you should do is just go up in front of the waiter and just shout your order before any of your friends have a chance to. In other words, you should come across as socially deranged, isolate everyone, be loud and obnoxious in order to get the beer you want. Because the beer you want is the most important thing. And even if all of your friends think you're an obnoxious jerk now, it doesn't matter because you have a greater preference for the beer. This is actually one of Dan Ariely's suggestions, right? A tenured economist in the top economic school in the country suggests that what people should do is loudly, rudely shout out their order and interrupt all of their friends to do it and risk isolating everyone around them in order to get the item that they want because they're going to be influenced by peer pressure. This is his actual suggestion. And it should be laughable, and Dan Ariely should be fired because he sucks at his job. Now, he also doesn't take his arguments to their logical conclusion, right? His entire book is basically written to criticize market interventionism. So for instance, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that Dan Ariely believes is that people make a worse choice when it's the free option, like choosing the free Hershey's Kiss over the better Lindt Tort for 9 cents. But he doesn't apply this to democracy. He doesn't say, see, this is the problem with democracy. This is the problem with government, that the candidate who promises the free stuff is going to get the most votes instead of a candidate that's realistic and saying, you know, the market's better than providing this stuff. But they're going to get more votes that actually openly admits the cost of these things instead of pretending that they're free. So this is the problem with the government. He doesn't do that. Instead, he pretends that this is a problem with the market, unique to the market, and advocates very superficial government suggestions and, quite frankly, ludicrous suggestions to solve problems, such as just loudly screaming and interrupting all your friends to order something so you won't be influenced by that. And this is a book that's a bestseller, which I think reflects the state of the market and all the intelligence, of a lot of people. And but one thing that the book does prove is that Dan Ariely is predictably irrational, but the market is not. Thank you.